Good evening. This is the Advisory Commission of Coastal Waters, September 16th, 2024. Julie cannot make it tonight, so we've got me. And we've got a nice agenda with some good items on there. And Bill Caper's just going to do quite a bit of some special items, which we're looking forward to hearing. First on is the harbor master. Now, he didn't think he's going to make it. He's at a wedding. You had your daughter's wedding next.
No, son's coming.
Son's next, and he had his daughter's this weekend. So he sent that note out that I hope everybody read, which kind of explained as much as we've got going on that. The delay in the ordinance is based on some circumstances of the letter he got when he asked for some assistance from the state to figure out what kind of control he had and what he didn't have, and it came back kind of muddied to the point where it said, yeah, we want you to be in the harbor management plan, but you do have legislation back in 1953 that set up a certain number of ordinances that you have in place now. So that began to make it a little bit like, all right, well, where do we fit where we're putting new ordinances into play? So the discussion turned around to, well, we think we need some legal counsel that's more than our house counsel in town. He's been working with John Z on this, and it seems like they've not gotten past the point of communication to get a lawyer in play. So that's where it sits right now. It's kind of stopped.
Can you play that back?
Yeah.
They have not selected, I just want to make sure I'm listening well enough.
And I'm not the expert in this, but I will do my best.
Yeah. We reflected that, as a group, that we would seek specialized counsel.
Right.
I believe our first selectman indicated he would support that path.
That's correct. But it hasn't happened.
So we have neither selected special counsel nor, well, I guess we have not either secured special counsel to give us guidance on a path forward.
As far as I know, that's correct. Yeah. So it's John's, he was going to make that arrangement. John Kina has been sending him a number of correspondences saying, where are we, or let's talk, or something. As far as I know, it has not gotten through to him. They have not connected on that.
I thought that letter said that they found a lawyer, and
They have a suggested lawyer.
he was not interested in partaking. Isn't
I
that how the
think so.
letter read?
No, they found somebody. He had talked to them. He was interested, but he has to have a contract, obviously, through us.
Good.
And I don't, Martin, and also you were thinking you might have knew another lawyer as well, but that didn't enter into, okay, it didn't matter.
Didn't work out.
It doesn't matter. So there is one out there that has some comfort level, at least with John Kina. And so that's kind of where we're stopped at the moment.
Again, procedurally, I don't know how the process works, but isn't there also a process, again, directed by our Board of Selectmen, not just our first selectman, that would suggest our own town council would, and maybe you can coach me here, our own town council would either waive that this is not his wheelhouse, or direct and retain?
I agree, both of those could be possible, right? I don't know enough to answer that question, unfortunately.
I'm willing to
So I
reflect
don't
on
know.
two meetings.
Yeah, if it gets stopped for so long, how do we move that on? It's what you're probably.
That's where I'm going, because for the reasons that we saw value in going down this path of both refining, adding.
I know, we got it done.
We had
Now-
hundreds of hours
Right.
into the right purpose.
Yeah, I don't.
Maybe a sequence issue that said, irrespective of, should we have researched this initially, or known to have researched this initially if we had this jurisdiction. But nonetheless, I think 2 meetings later,
Yeah.
we're not moving.
Well, as we advise our first selectman, I can make a step too, and do I have a more clout than John Kina? I don't know, but I'll try as well to say, hey, let's get some attention back on this. We're at a point that we'd like to keep rolling. And if it does take another legal counsel, that's going to take time too as well. You're going to have to go.
Or you need the, again, to spitball here, but is it, I think we're seeking guidance on what is the process within the town to identify an appropriate specialized counsel
True.
and then advance toward retaining them. Until we get those two steps, and Sam, I'm looking toward you, until we get those two steps, are we going to advance? Could we advance? I thought you had a legal background as well.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, so I'm looking,
Police blotter, yes.
okay, different issue, I'm sorry. Redirecting.
Yeah.
But I think that's a two procedural.
Yeah, no, I agree, yeah. It's,
And I think this is a Board of Selectmen discussion, not just a John Zagrodsky.
Right.
I think, since
Yeah.
we report to the Board of Selectmen, are we giving guidance or insight or recommendations to the Board of Selectmen?
so I will proceed to see what I can get through and find out what maybe the hang-up is, and how we get that
Yeah.
moving along.
Or we make a decision that we park it.
Well, I think it's been parked just happenstance, and we don't want it that way, but until we move to the next step, it is kind of, it's not parked, it's in transition, stopped at a certain point. That's how I look at it anyway. So, and if John Kane was here, he might have more insight on that, or he might have the same answer I had, is that he's waiting for hear from the select people about what's going on.
I would hope even if he's not here, that we can get an update by the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll find out, I will try to find out, okay, do my best. Okay, so the chairman's report, I don't have a whole lot. Bill, could you flip those 3 pictures on there?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Is that possible?
Yep.
So, one of the exciting things was, for me anyway, was a couple of weeks ago, the testers came in, our group that we've hired, and they did core sampling in the harbor. So, they called me up and they said, hey, well, you can't get on the boat. It's a small boat. I guess last time when we did a survey, you were allowed to get on the boat and such. I never did that. So I thought we'd do the same here. They said no. So I shadowed the operation in my little whaler, and it was good. They took 7 samples in all the locations in the harbor, and this big old boat came cruising in here. This is their work boat, and they had 2 people on it. And then the bow, you can flip to the next if you want. This is fast. Yeah, and the bow off to the right, they just have a device that augers in about 2.5 feet or so, takes a sample, pulls it up, and they store all 7 until they get to shore. Do one more, Bill. All right, and this is what they do is they actually skill saw this plastic sheath that holds the sediment, cut it in half, and then they take samples, stick it in a jar, keep it in ice, whatever, send it to the lab, then picks it up, and 30 to 40 days later, we'll have the results we're all waiting for.
They're looking for heavy metals and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're doing the whole thing that they did just exactly for the Park and Rec piece, same deal. It didn't smell, so I didn't smell petrochemicals that I'm used to in my business, my old business, but I also saw no clams in there either, so it'd be interesting what they find. So that'll be the biggest point, is what are we gonna get back for results? So it's done now. This is.
They're going like, what, 4 feet deep in the ground? 5 feet?
Well, yeah, it's a little exaggerated there. They said they were really taking samples from about 3 feet-ish. It didn't look exacting to me, but they were the experts.
Where were they?
So 7 pieces. So I can't exactly where they are, but if you remember the whole location that we had that we wanted dredged, just kind of piece that out in 7 different spots.
So it's kind of south of the gut in the channel.
Yeah, well, it's definitely further from the boat club because there's a deep spot there. They're not even dredging that.
Right.
So there's a deep spot, then there's a spot that's Park and Rec, and then they start from there. And they basically, it looked very even to me how they were doing it the whole length.
Was it essentially in the channel then?
Yeah,
So they went from the channel working from north to south?
they actually started in the south,
Okay.
their preference in that,
Yeah.
and then they worked their way back up toward the boat club.
So I have, a couple of times recently, I've been curious about this. I've gone to the boat club, bought fuel, my depth finder is on,
Yep.
and I go back out the channel. And it doesn't start shoaling until you're well past Dave Campbell's house and
Right.
you're
That's the low.
You're not quite at the yacht club, at the first northernmost part of the yacht club, but almost.
Right.
And then, in my estimation, I mean, it really does, it changes depth by 1 to 2 feet, and it's quite quick, and it's quite profound, and then it kind of levels, and this is at low tide, but any tide, but I mean, even at low tide, it's still 5 feet.
Yeah.
And then, that's true for maybe past the yacht club,
Right.
a little bit. And then it starts deepening again. So there's really, to me, as
There's a worse section
as
than
an
the rest.
unprofessional, as an engineering type,
Mhm.
the thing that we're talking about is not longer than 200 yards, and it's probably 150.
That's the worst section. I mean, the idea is we're trying to get the whole section down to, the whole distance down to a certain level. One section being worse, that you've been talking about. And the police were there, and I said, yeah, here's what we're doing, so they wanted to know what was going on too. And they said, oh yeah, we come so close to that 4 foot, I think your boat hit it too, or came close to it too. So everybody knows kind of that area. And that's gonna be the best relief, getting rid of that if we get it done. But the whole thing would be improved as long as we're out.
So kind of an interesting policy question that for all of us to think about is how do you make the decision when we finally get a budget for this dredging, which will be a big number?
Yeah.
How do you make the decision of is it worth it or not for the town? Because even right now, for all of the center consoles in the harbor, which is the vast majority of the boat by significant measure, it's deep enough.
Right. And that's what we'll have to decide. Part of it will be if this is not toxic or it doesn't have all these issues to it, and it can be dumped for free, of course it costs money to get it out there, then that number is lower, and then your decision may be not so radical.
It's lower, but still gonna be
It'll be up there.
big number.
But it's a lot better than if we have to
Yes.
take it to a third party and incinerate or whatever. So that's part of it. But if it does become a point and people say, we may be a harbor that you only, if you have a large boat, you can only get out at high tide. Those are our options. I don't think we can look at it yet, but there's all those different options.
So we continue to gather facts.
Yeah, so the main thing is, let's see what it's like. I'm gonna say, let's see how good it is. You go the other way. It could be tied into the same problems that Park and Recs had, or it could be better. And then once that comes back, then that goes to the EPA and the DEEP, and they look at those numbers, and then they start putting a spreadsheet together about it's not gonna work, we're not dumping it anymore, or yeah, you can. I think there's probably more in between there, but those are the two big areas.
Your gut would kind of say that this material should be fairly clean because it should be fairly new, right? This isn't an area that's never been dredged or exposed before, or say hasn't been done in 30 or 50 years, right? It's this section of the Norotan Yacht Club docks and the channel area has been done. Was it 90 or
I think it was 2000.
Yeah, and when I talked with the contractor who did it last time, he said, well, you have a better chance because of that. The
Yeah.
difference is, though, there are no new parameters on testing.
Yeah, but it's more
Pesticides and things are now coming into play, although the
Yeah.
pesticides that Park and Rec seemed to get hit with were stuff from quite a few years ago, not the local stuff that people are putting on their lawns.
That stuff
They're
hasn't
not
been,
testing for that now.
correct me if I'm wrong, but that part that's being dredged there hasn't been done in a very long time, if ever, right?
I don't recall, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Was the age known because of its depth or its composition of what was found?
It was just certain contaminants that were like just a squidge over the acceptable level.
So, we'll see. It's kind of, I'm excited to see what we get. And
Do
then-
they have a timeline on when they think?
Yeah, they said about 45 days, so I'm gonna say end of October we might have something. And then that'll start to tell the picture right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted
The
to
update.
throw that out.
Thank you.
That was exciting.
That picture number 2, to reference, it seems to be more,
Yeah,
so
so,
far farther south. Maybe that's where they started or something like that.
yeah, I can't remember which one I took that. When they did the original bathymetry, I'm probably saying it wrong, they followed that whole line and they started south end and just kind of worked their way back. So they had submitted that to DEEP to say, is this where you want to take the samples? And they basically said, yeah, okay. They didn't change much on the way out. of
This
where-
appears to be closer to Long Neck Point, as I look at this.
No.
Yeah, it's,
No, that's in the middle of the
Definitely
channel.
yeah, I was using
Well,
my
I mean,
iPhone,
in
so-
terms of north-south, I agree, east-west, but.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is I was right there with them, and they were taking it in the channel, so I know that's for a fact. And one of the guys has been doing it for years, so I think
There's the
they're, I
octagon,
think they were competent, so.
Yeah, it's not the octagon,
not the octagon,
no,
the,
the gazebo.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's that boat waypoint,
So-
that 40 or 33.
So that's near the
right
green
on the
channel
channel.
marker then?
Right, that's waypoint, right?
Okay.
Correct.
So, I mean, but what, just, you guys who have shallow draft boats with depth finders, just do what I did. And the demarcation is really pretty clear before it returns to a.
I agree, I've done it on mine
7 or
too.
8
You can
feet.
see it on the chart too, the
Yeah.
dredging chart. The
Yeah, it
survey
shows it.
chart.
So it's the spot, so. They'll definitely have to take out more there
It's not that huge.
to get their same piece.
Right, it doesn't seem like it's a long distance, having done that with you.
Then there's usually, I don't know what you've seen recently, there's usually another hump down a little past the yacht club pier,
Okay.
like as you go out. There's 2 humps.
I seem to remember that being there before we dredged the last time.
I think it becomes there almost immediately because it's just
Because the
the
outflow
way
of-
the sediment flows.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It comes past like the boat club and like that point of the Campbells, and it gets really hollowed out, and it's really deep there.
Right.
And then as it
It starts
travels, it
dropping
sort
off.
of drops down, and,
Loses its energy, yeah.
yeah.
Hey, John Keane is here, all right.
Hi, how you doing?
Done.
Good to see you. Bill, you want to go ahead and do your,
You wanna do the clam thing first?
yeah,
Clam beds?
yeah, so
Or,
So the clam bed seating, we had a little, as you may have read, Freight's had a little problem with their boat. They moved it out of harm's way over to Norm Bloom's place, and then something went wrong and it sunk. Norm
Didn't
Bloom's
seem to
place.
sink that much because it was back in action.
It was
3
back in
days later.
action quick, but, you know, I saw Roger Jr. and I said, so what happened? And he goes, it got broadside somehow and went down. And what a mess, and that's all I got out of it, give the man a few words. So, but it's an operation. right?
But it's not an operation actually as we sit here right now.
Oh, no.
I saw him towing it with the smaller blue boat
Oh, no.
over to Norwalk this morning.
Oh, okay,
Like 6
all right,
o'clock
more,
this morning.
more continuous.
So he was
Okay.
towing the big
Water
red
in the
boat.
crankcase.
Oh, you know? Okay, good. Good, good. Water in the crankcase. So just get it all out after that little
Yes, not.
issue.
That's what he said the other day when we went out testing.
Yeah, and I talked to him on Saturday, where he was still futzing with the engine cover up, and it still wasn't running.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well then,
so the long and the short of that is our clam bed restocking is postponed. We were
There
trying
we
to
go.
do that a couple of weeks ago, right before we, so we'll hopefully get that
To be
done in
continued, right?
October, yeah.
okay.
Has anyone been clamming this summer?
Oh, well, I don't know, you saw David Kahn, and I tested out a little spot over in the back of Ziegler's Cove, just to see, it's all rocky back in there, and you said, hey, let's see if there's anything back there. So we got out and looked super low tide, and sure enough, there were, lots of frogs and hard shells in there amongst the rocks. So it was his thought to see if they're actually in there, and then we'd have to figure out someday if that'd even be illegal. It's restricted now, I'm sure, but, so that's the only claiming we did. Of course, we did not keep them, we just threw them back in. But other than that, no. I have to admit, I applied for a clamming permit from the health department and never got one back.
You didn't pass the background check?
I didn't, I guess not. I don't know, I didn't think I had any recordings of trouble, but whatever.
Well, the concept with the restocking, which I think is important, is John Zagrodzky seems interested in going out, as
Right.
naturally would be. And it'd be great to get him out and 1 or 2 other board of selectmen so they can see where our public clamming beds are, see Great Island from the water, which I'm sure they have, but another refreshing of that. And we can serve as ambassadors to what's going on out there. So I think that's an important thing we want to catch, but we still have some good water.
John, originally we were going to do the harbor master report first, and I just tried to explain the letters, whatever, and but everybody got a chance to read them. I don't know if you wanted to add anything more to it. I think what I left with it, it was stuck with John Z not moving to the point where we can get an attorney, maritime or whatever, a more expert attorney, and we're not sure how he's thinking or what's going on. We thought he was onto it, but we hadn't.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have not gotten any more update on that, and as I said in my,
Okay.
nothing has changed since I wrote
Okay.
this.
And you had a wedding this weekend, so you know.
Yeah. I just got back 15 minutes ago.
Oh, all right, we appreciate it. All right.
John, do you know, has this been presented to the Board of Selectmen as a request for funding?
I don't know. I know some information has been passed on to the town attorneys. What has been passed on, I don't know. The name of the attorney I mentioned might have been socialized, but I don't have a lot of details. I haven't been able to catch up with John, but I'll talk to him again, see if I can get a hold of him.
Bill, you want to do some of your presentation?
Sure. Water trail. Let's see. So,
Hmm.
I'm in trouble with Kaspersky. All right, so I think this was sent around, you maybe all had a chance to take a look. So this is with Great Island coming on agenda in this last year, this is an idea that popped into my head. And it's just really born of, as I'm sure you all feel, the shoreline of Great Island is absolutely beautiful. This is like our little mini Maine coast. And if you think of up and down Long Island Sound, a place that gets more beautiful than this, will please tell me. I think this is about as good as it gets in Long Island Sound, at least for this type of shorefront. So it's a real town asset. And I guess, you know, I just have a complete bias here. I want to protect it. I want to figure out how this does not fall victim to some sort of, not suggesting our current Great Island Committee would harm it in any way, but future island committees who might want to do something to it that would maybe make it fun for a municipal program, but mar the beauty of it. And so that, I think, is an important concept here. So just the concept of a water trail, hopefully I won't back up too much here, but if I could just read this for me, have this sink in, I think. So a water trail is a designated route along a river, lake, canal, or bay specifically designed for people using small boats, kayaks, canoes, single sailboats, or rowboats. And as you know from our shorelines, those small boats have really proliferated in the last 10 years. These trails are sometimes called blueways because they're like the aquatic equivalent to a hiking trail or greenway. And if you think of Block Island and how successful the greenways have been there in getting people out and walking and focused on the environment and protecting those areas, it's analogous. Water trails often have well-developed access and launch points, are near significant historical, environmental, or cultural points of interest, and can often include nearby amenities such as rest and picnic stops. And they've got a couple purposes: enabling recreation and ultimately increasing the visibility and knowledge about the local body of water. So the concept is definitely recreation oriented, but it's dual. It's also to try to have stewardship and conservation of the waterway and the shores. And so those things really go hand in hand here by establishing the focus of the water trail.
Is the concept that it is sort of like a bike path in the sense that it has dedicated space for these small boats, or is it just, like, and I'm specifically thinking about Ziegler Cove, like, is there like a perimeter that's reserved for small boats, or are they right in the middle of the hullabaloo?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of it being reserved, but it'd be nice to show a pathway, or safety-wise, around the harbor, and that actually could be another guiding point of the water trail that people aren't thinking of going right across. But there's points of interest along the trail, along the shoreline, which might keep them going along the contours. So this is, there's Parks and Rec has successfully created paddleboard access and appreciation of water on Weed Beach, and with the kayak racks at Pear Tree Point also. But it's just sort of, go there and then do what you want. And that's fine. But I think it's more dangerous perhaps in Ziegler's Cove, where there gets to be such a mall of boats in the summer. And also, it's not guided. It's not giving, let's say, a young mother and her young children an idea of where to go and how to go about it. And so it gives access to young people and can promote doing that safely if we stick to a concept of maybe perimeter. So, let's see. So this, by the way, is like a 6 or 7 page thing I'm walking you through if you haven't gone through it. And I did send this on to Monica McNally, and Laura, you got a copy. And my thought was to inject this into the Great Island Committee discussion informally at this point. I've not said that Coastal Commission is behind it in any sense, but I think the purpose of reviewing it for you all is to get your thoughts on it and see if we'd like to get behind it in some fashion. And I don't know at what point this would be an active agenda item in the Great Island Committee. They've got a lot of things on their plate, and it's pretty serious stuff, and this perhaps is further on down the line. But I think this is a real strong thing about trying to grab a piece of the island that's preserved for nature. And that to be an advocate for that early on, I think, is important. Great Island's specialness is arguably its architecture, and then its nature. And if you ignore the nature part, you really have the risk of riding roughshod of the very reason we all value it. And so, as a real upfront reason here, we're trying to have people be able to, residents and other visitors alike, access this natural beauty. And so people don't know how to do that. A water trail would be a lead for them. It'd be a guided way to do that. And by establishing the concept, putting it in people's heads, showing them a way to go about it, having these pre-marked trails, you enable access that way. It's not easily reached currently, right? You can't get it too easily from Pear Tree Point. Most people have sit-on kayaks, which are rather slow. They're fairly safe for going out there, but it's just a sort of long, arduous thing. And so most people don't go out there. So if you had another access point and then enabled people, showed them where to go, it would enable more people to say, hey, I can do this.
But what is your thought on, and Lori, I guess this is kind of also a question for you, on the little beach as a launch point for small watercraft, and
So
how do we not, or do we recreate what we have at Weed Beach and Pear Tree Point Beach, which is like these big racks of plastic?
Yeah, the focus, maybe the word is access. Because how do you gain access? This suggests to me, as I interpret this, is a path around it to visit, material points.
yeah, to skip to this section of the presentation. So this is just me thinking top of my head. I didn't spend a lot of time on this, but I conceptualized 3 different loops, which are a trail and all launching from the beach. It could launch more from where the fireboat is and where the existing boathouse is, or it could launch on the north side. There's that little shallow.
Well, so I guess my question is sort of a logistical one, which is, if you have people launching, they have to have a small boat to launch.
Yeah, and so
And are you contemplating having big storage racks like at the various town beaches? Are you thinking that they would just bring them out on their car, and there's enough parking out there near that beach to?
I actually don't know. I thought access plan is a real
So
issue.
it's way too soon, let
Yeah.
me jump in here, okay, it's all good and really important questions. So, the first thing I will say is this Saturday, September 21st, there will be 2 visioning input sessions. There's one here at Town Hall in the morning, I think coffee starts at 9:30, kicks off at 10. There'll be a presentation by Reed Hildebrand, our consultants, after which representatives of their firm, their subconsultant will be talking with our residents. And there'll be different questions that you can answer by putting pins in pin boards, by putting up yellow stickers saying, these are the 5 things that I think are important to me. And there's a series of questions that people be asked to answer on spot. So it's getting into, do people want to keep the island pristine? Do people want huge infrastructure? So it's that gathering. So if you all feel strongly about this, either way, you need to be at one of these sessions. And
So that's the auditorium.
the morning is in the auditorium here, and then in the afternoon, it starts at 2 o'clock on the island, in front of, weather permitting, in front of the stables, otherwise they might actually go into the stable, although the sound actually there's really difficult. You wanna take a bus, you can make a reservation, I believe there's still spots, leaves Pear Tree at 1:30, otherwise you can walk in and be there at 2 o'clock. So it's really critically important that the community gets out there. Following that, they're also, Reed Hildebrand and our consultants will be meeting with different, they're gonna have focus groups on different topics, like one will be in the environment, one will be this, and the Great Island Committee will be working together for each of those topics to put a list of organizations in town that should have a representative. So certainly, someone like you, Bill, or some representative of the Coastal Commission should be there talking about these things and saying, this is something that we see as very important to the development
Would it be
of Great Island.
presumptuous of this committee to ask for us to be a focus group with them as it relates to the water?
I can
Use.
speak with Monica about that, as opposed to maybe you meeting, because there may be other groups that are environmentally
Yeah, I
interested.
think everybody on this committee brings a lot of perspective of the water-related opportunities and issues there.
I can share with them. One thing I say is I know the contract we have with them sort of lays out how many focus groups and the topic, so, we may have to work within that. One of the, Reed Hildebrand is the lead, but then there are 9 or 10 different sub-consultants, and one thing I liked about Reed is they have a firm in the group that's working is there's a guy who specializes in sort of water-related activities and delivering programming on and around the water. So there's definitely somebody in the mix specializing in there. So all of this will be laid out over the next month from when we go, 12 months from when we go to the vision plan to the master plan. But it's really important that all of you in these various, there'll be a survey going out to the community probably within the next week or two with a lot of different questions about the types of services and amenities that they'll be gathering up. But it's really important that everybody gets their input. But yes, we want to make sure that this commission, you and Julie are ex officio members as well. So, and I know John is committed that he wants that linkage.
One of the things I saw in the newspaper about Saturdays is there's subsets in the afternoon, and one of them is called water and recreation. There's 5 different subsets.
Only in the afternoon?
This is in the afternoon. So I unfortunately will not be around, and neither will Julie, but somebody should be on that subset, taking that tour, talking to that hour and a half, water and recreation, just see what they're thinking, see what people are thinking, and add to it.
When you say they're thinking, what is that the consultant?
Well, the consultant will be initiating discussions.
They're going to be asking questions.
And so-
The point of
He
this
asked
is
a
they want to
specific question about
grow.
what they're thinking, so I'm trying to,
Well,
I don't
the
know
question
if I
leads
have
to
Okay, what
somebody's controlling this, and that's why I asked.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm only reading a small subset, but
Right.
they want to make sure that that subject is touched on. So I don't know how they're initiated, but there will be other people there hopefully, talking about it, and then we need to have someone
But
attend that as well, just to start. It's a very.
ask it again, which is, would it be presumptuous for this commission
Oh, no,
to
eventually.
specifically request, and we can blend in with
Yeah.
one of the other more focused,
I think, no, it's not
surveys.
presumptuous.
I think we should. I
We
think we shouldn't be competing with people who want to talk about the riding stables and things like that. It should be a good quality discussion focused on the water-related issues.
Right. And I guess
Especially
what-
if they have somebody who is the water guy.
Yeah. This Saturday one is a very, up-level discussion. It'd be nice to have someone at least be part of that, right? The
Yes.
next part is, because we are de facto, as on the organization, they set it up that way, that our group should be, hopefully, and we'll make sure we work that in, be part of this discussion in a much more stronger and directed manner. And so Julie and I are on it, but we suck all the information out from you all, so we just have to make sure that that's still, and you can help us to make sure that Monica still wants us to be part of that, so that we can.
It's the Great Island Committee, it's not just Monica, right? So
Yes, it's Great Island
it's
Advisory.
Advisory, so there's a group.
Yes, there's 9 of us.
Yeah, so,
9 of us.
And
there's a
then we are
number
part
ex
of that, but
officio
offset.
members.
But our group is offset from that. We're not in that, but we should be able to add in. And her comments to us, because we've been trying to interject things all along, was wait till this whole master plan is set up and going and moving, and then your time will come. She's told me that. So, well, the time has come. So
Time's coming.
We're ready.
We're kicking off this week.
So picking up on this and
Oh,
that's the
sorry.
presentation, no, this has been good. So, first enable access, because what people get to use and cherish, they then want to protect, right? So allow people to use this to recreate, to really enjoy the natural beauty that is there. And there's dualism. The second thing is establishing a proper environmental stewardship of the shoreline and surrounding waters. And when I hear just water and recreation, that to me doesn't cover what a water trail wants to do. It wants to have recreation around, have people use the assets, the natural resources, but it also wants to protect them. And that just doesn't stop at the shore's edge, because part of being on the water is seeing the lovely tree beside the shore. So, what could this be protecting against? A whole series of successive governments and committees in Darien layering on maybe more docks for sailboats, for municipal sailing, maybe more patios for town cocktail hours, a boardwalk, not maybe a boardwalk, but some sort of walkway around the edge that now makes from the seaside, doesn't make it so pretty. There's a whole bunch of things you could envision over the next 20 or 30 years that people come, subsequent leadership teams say, oh, this is really great, I can do something neat, the townspeople will love it. And, from shoreside, there's a lot of neat things I could see also, but all those things would be wrecking the shoreline that we all enjoy today. And so to me, it just doesn't stop at, enjoying the water, it's what you're seeing, 20, 30, 50 feet, in the coastal zone. So I think it's very important that this concept of the coastal zone, which was number 4 here, the zone number 4, which was outlined by the town initially, that the water trail would protect all that, would see this as a preserve that's part of people's enjoyment of the water and the coastal regions of the island and surrounding coves. So part of this is getting that consciousness established, that focus. So part of this is getting a stewardship group going. For example, what if someone, once a week went around, or a couple guys, and collected trash? That will be increasing with the use of Great Island. Making sure there's not, conditions that look dangerous, or seeing something new that they want to put on the agenda of the water trail and let people know about it. But I think that this is an equally important part, again, sort of dualism.
I think there will be many voices associated with this. I guess looking at 2, and I also look at 2 and 3, there'll be many voices in the community that will have an opinion on what goes in beyond the shoreline. I think it's just the natural process of the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Many.
the whole many.
Well, that seems to be the vulnerability or the risk of Great Island, right? It's a small area, and it's got so much potential on so many different facets, right? And to me, the first thing that's going to be killed in all that is the natural beauty.
Well, as
That's
an
at risk.
Right there, I agree.
It's at risk.
when we were going through the interview process, one of the consultants who was not selected, we can ask them, well, give some sort of initial idea, just kind of see how they were thinking. And parking is a real challenge, I'll be honest, one of the early things that we were trying to figure out. And this consultant said, well, the polo field is really, a good flat spot that, you could get like a lot of cars in. And I'm sitting there as a boater saying, well, I don't want to be sitting out there in the water now looking at, selfishly, 200 cars. And especially those of us who like to be there at sunset or whatever, and you're imagining all these so whatever. So, just thinking, again, very selfishly, I'm like, ooh, I don't like that idea. But it's going to be important as different ideas and concepts. But it turns out that's completely a flood zone, so you probably couldn't really make that a parking lot.
One of the ideas that I worry about is a lot of people are going to go to the island and see it from the island out. Only boaters get to see what that really looks like from the water. The ultimate would be, hey, you've got bus people going out there to look on a Saturday. Can we get everybody on a boat who's never been on and seen it from the outside? Now that's going to be, captain's license, a lot of roadblocks. But there's a ton of people in this town who probably have no idea what it looks like looking back at it from the water.
I do know that recently the consultants were taken out by boat.
To include the Lighthouse tour.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
So
They're
that's good. That's a good start. The average person still in town may not, if they're not a boater, wouldn't know that. But that's okay. Okay, good. Sorry.
So, a lot of matters to consider on this. I think we need some volunteers to do this. It'd be great to partner, for example, with the Nature Center. They could help point out things on the shore that would be fun to point out on the trail. What are town resources to getting this done? Money, safety and liability concerns. I think it'd be important to see there's water trails up and down the Connecticut coast for some of us to investigate what would be some of the best practices to making them successful. The routing of the water trail is certainly open for discussion. I've just done a quick grab at what might work. A launch point, we were talking about that, an access plan, those are all wound up in bigger picture questions. The concept of having like waterproof maps that someone goes off with and sees 10 items they're going to spot. We'll talk about what those could be in a second, but I think that would be a great lure to have people go off and do it. A regular volunteer program for trail upkeep. And I think it's really important that you have hand in hand a lot of social media focus. You're trying to establish this as a focal point, a special thing that a lot of people who aren't so water oriented maybe don't understand, just per your point about getting people out there.
Yeah, and then there's one other, we have that concept, the backside, we all know loses a ton of water, so there's gonna have to be warning signs, this is the Bay of Fundy, if you get out too far, you're not coming back.
And that may be one of the intriguing things, right? People say, what's that look like when I go out and get stuck?
That's right, so learn that, but
yeah, two of the three
lunch, should be there a while.
2 of the 3 loops I have go tidal flat, so. Sorry, hold on. This previously saw this. So this is just 3 loops I can see. The 1 and 2 get into tidal flats. They go around the edges of the island though, and into the pretty parts of southern Ziegler's, if that's called Ziegler's, the south also. And then the one to the right's a little more adventurous. Is always deep water though, and you can go around Fish Island. Now that may not be the best thing to do for the people who own the private ownership of Fish Island, but we could offer a stewardship plan that the town would be cleaning it up every month or every couple of weeks, and that is, for example, Main Island Trail gets a lot of private islands to be included in their camping, a list of campsites. So Fish Islands are beautiful, and I go out there regularly and think there's too much trash. So I think it'd be great to wrap it into a town program where it's taken proper care of. Anyway, just an idea. And again, launch points, number of possibilities on Great Island itself to conform with the parking that might be ultimately decided upon. And the concept of those, 2 or 3 or 4 racks of beautiful objects, kayaks, but that are bright and sort of ugly from the shore, is an issue, and I don't know how that's dealt with. So again, all wrapped up in the bigger town questions.
Any idea from like all the racks that are over at the boat club or over at Wheat Beach, like number of people that use them, or just are they there all the time? I mean, is it pretty much a parking space?
There is utilization, yeah.
There is? Good.
Yeah, at the club and then the ones on the outside.
I have to, so I hear this all the time, and I think it too. And I was listening to us all talk about this the other day, and I wondered who's out more as a percentage of ownership, the boaters or the kayakers and stand-up paddleboarders? My guess is, because I hear that about boats all the time, no one uses them. To the person on the shore, they apparently just sit there most of the time.
I mean, I have a boat on a dock, and I've always got some paddler that's coming across the bow of my boat when I'm in my slip. So I know there's usage. I've never actually sat out there and counted the empty slots.
I think it's pretty active in town. I've been amazed the last 5 years.
Yeah, glad. That's what it should be, that's great to hear.
But I too feel that all the kayak racks are a bit of an eyesore, despite having a couple of kayaks on.
People are using them, that it serves a purpose, right? I mean, that's the idea of it.
What gives you the access? In the absence of the access,
Yeah.
they won't be choosing one, two, or three.
Right.
There's very few people that are able to transport one from their home to the point of launch.
But you can also step them back 20 or 30 feet from the shoreline and put plantings between the shoreline and the racks so that they
Yeah.
disappear if you've got a budget for it.
Great Island may offer more possibilities of that.
It's doable, you just need the money and to get the right plants, but, I mean, one can do it. We have this commission in town that's called the Environmental Protection Commission, I think.
I'm on it.
Do they have a hand in any of this stuff?
Not really. No. Usually it's inland waterway or water courses, but not,
No solar.
no saltwater fishing.
That's the demarcation.
So they're sort of Gorham Pond North.
And Holly Pond falls into it too. Not sure. I'm glad they do, but yeah, and everything north right now. Mostly wetlands and water courses.
So this is just potential things that could be listed on a water trail map. I think this, creates some of the intrigue for people who aren't familiar with being on the water. Why would I go out? Well, you could, point out ospreys nests, seagulls nests. There's a whole bunch of things here that I think would be really interesting for us to figure out where they are in our shores, and I think having some naturalists help us figure that out would be something, and then how to put them on a nice, let's say triptych that's water, coated, waterproof, and people get to take with them, and it sort of becomes a little bit of a, for kids, a scavenger hunt, and for,
Check off.
depending how you phrase it, it could be quite intriguing for adults also.
If we didn't own Great Island, and you removed a couple of those pieces, you could offer the same insight for the existing waterways, right?
Yeah, to me, this would launch us, if successful in sort of the ideal, it could really launch people to looking at the water more in Darien, and this could multiply an approach so that you get more people to the water, more people doing things in the water, liking it for a good reason. So this presents a little jewel, I think, to set that in motion. I would hope so. Not that we're not doing so badly already. There's a lot of people who like the water, but I think it could be better and more.
If it doesn't, it would be a shame.
Yeah.
We invested in an asset we're not going to use.
So those are the extent of my thoughts, sort of thrown together. But, I think it's a good idea for the Great Island Committee to consider this. I don't know if there's any other plan for the coastal zone that'd be comprehensive. This could present a comprehensive one.
Again, I just think we're just at the very
Yep.
beginning, so it's great that you've got this laid out, and we just have to get this information to the right people and the consultants and whatever.
And the question is how, if this commission is interested, how do we advocate for it? And I'm not quite sure of all those, how we want to pull the levers on that if we want to.
It's funny, it's almost like, it's like the cart and the horse thing, right? Chicken and the egg thing. It's like you keep saying that we're at the very beginning, we need to get these groups going first. It's like, well, if the ideas don't get presented into the commission,
No, it
just
needs
sort
to
of,
get presented.
sort of be there before the groups start forming and have their own ideas, then how do they sort of take all that information in with fresh eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's not, but I'm saying now's the time, we're gonna be out and asking the community, so now it is the time to start socializing, so whether it's going to the sessions on Saturday or the focus groups or whatever, but start getting this information out there, absolutely, now is the time.
Okay.
And I mean, it's gonna be multi-years to develop anything out, but one of the things that we talk about are what are some, what we call kind of quick hits, the ways that aren't huge infrastructure or things that are gonna take, a lot of process to get through that can help the community use the island. And, again, I'm not speaking for the committee, but you could see something of this could be a fairly quick hit, perhaps, because it doesn't sound like it requires a lot of infrastructure, so.
It appears, having listened in on the meetings, the Great Island meetings, that one of the reasons that they were, the consultancy was selected was they had a methodology they've experienced to offer, they've done similar projects of size and scope, and they had a methodology to solicit input. Look, they appeared, my view was they appeared to be good at it, had done similar jobs, and they were not starting with it's back to your chicken egg. They were not starting with a blank slate, but they were saying, listen, here are some ideas to get reactions to.
Yeah.
This is my review, my insight, as opposed to the paper's blank and what do you think? Which didn't appear to be as efficient. So, and I think that they're looking for insight against those high-level ideas, is how I interpret it.
I think that's right.
And I've never done it, so I'm just, you just think about it, right? You're like, it's like if you get too far down the road of identifying what it should be without ideas and input, then you're too far down one road to sort of turn and bring in fresh ideas. And I don't know, it sounds like that's good, because you have to start with something, right?
I think we hired them because they're good at this.
Yeah.
Either we have the right ones or wrong ones,
Yeah,
but they're hired.
we think they're good at it, but I mean, my instinct is there's gonna be a very broad spectrum of what the community wants for that property. We've literally had a letter from people saying, it's so pristine, it's so beautiful, we think the town should just lock the gates, not let anybody on it, and let it just be a nature preserve. Literally. Like, not even be open to the public. I suspect there are people who can visualize some fairly intensive
Raise it, cut
development.
down all the trees, develop it, I mean, there's the
Develop,
range.
whether, a restaurant, a hotel, whatever, and everything in between. So it's really gonna be everybody giving their input so that we can figure out what is going to best satisfy the interests of the community, but the environmental impact keeps coming up, and people feel very
Well, I think it's a great
strongly
idea,
about that.
what you proposed, and you could do it in conjunction with the high school kids. We've had a couple high school kids out doing water testing the last 2 times we went out, and they were really helpful. I'm sure you can get the right science teacher.
Yeah,
who
thanks,
might-
partnership.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
create some kind of partnership with the school, that would be a home run. I think it's a fantastic idea.
One thing to think about, because I think this sounds interesting as it relates to, let me just say, kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding. It's really focused on that sort of stuff. But from this commission's point of view, I think we ought to start one level higher, because there's clamming, there's fishing, there's scenic vistas, there are a whole lot, and then there's like the negative things that we also should be focusing on, which is how do we not have people run over in Ziegler's Cove? How do we not have people hurt themselves climbing on the rocks on the shore? There's those things. So to me, this may be great within its four corners, but we ought to start higher at all of the things that the coastline brings to bear. This may be one aspect of how we use it, but we shouldn't emphasize this to the absence of talking about how, like, do we need a path to get to the clam beds so that
Yes.
people can walk down there?
I think that it was clear before that we, as soon as, wherever, if the water, if it's high tide, we belong up to high tide. If it's low tide, we belong up to low tide. That's it.
Right.
I think you made that very clear, Wes.
Well,
Corey, right?
and
So-
there are some activities, clamming and fishing kind of cross the borders.
No, I understand that, but
But-
that was like, if you had something to say about it, we should say it. But for instance, the fact that you guys went clamming, and you went clamming through the clams back, no big deal, but that's not ideal clamming. It's not an ideal place to clam,
No,
right?
that's
It's just not.
No, it was experimental.
Right, but I'm just saying, so if people want to clam, we should have, that should be one thing we
Push.
do, but this should be something we should go propose to them as soon as possible. And then clamming and other ways that people could use the water from the land is, those are proposals. I don't think it's our jurisdiction to say, don't walk on the rocks.
Well, I think it totally is our jurisdiction to talk about accessing the rocks from the water. I think that is totally square within our jurisdiction.
I agree with that.
So, and same with fishing, I mean, I think it is generally within our jurisdiction to try to encourage opportunities for people to fish along the coastline, and so the fact that they're casting from a rock, it doesn't, to me, say we shouldn't think about and ultimately make some recommendation as, should we, and I'm not advocating one point or another, but like, should there be identified promontories where we're sort of facilitating people fishing, or was it just free range for everybody? And, are there going to be garbage receptacles in those places? Because there's going to be garbage in the places where people like to fish.
This goes back to the list that we gave the Board of Selectmen, our concerns.
Yeah, so, and my only point is, and again, it gets to the cart and the horse, which is, I think we should be, at the early stages, my intuition is we should make sure that we have all of these things on the table for discussion. Not just, and I'm not saying anything negative about this, I think it's good, but I think we should be advocating the other things.
You think this is one of many pieces?
Yeah.
Yes, is say this is one way that the Coastal Commission thinks that there's an added bonus for water usage and water access. Along with
So we should go get that list that we gave them before, that has sort of probably fallen down to the bottom of somebody's pile somewhere, and re-engage them.
Yeah, but to
And
me,
perhaps
that would
develop
be
those
the
ideas
ideal.
further, I think is what Flip is saying too, is that like fishing, here's some idea, like further breakouts of what these look like. Similar to what Bill did for this, is like water access for kayaks and this. This is a way that we can use that, right? Break it out further, right? I think that's what you're,
Yeah,
yeah.
So maybe that's maybe our next meeting, we can go back and revisit that list?
and that would be fine, but this is an example of where it would be good to have a focus group just with this group. I mean, we can only give them that list so many times. But it would be good to have an actual focused discussion with the person who is the coastal expert.
Yeah, I'll talk to Monica.
And I'm not even sure that when that list was created, that there was an advisory council, Great Island group formed. I think the sequencing is that
No, I think you're right, I think we
Yeah.
gave it to the selectmen.
selectmen,
Yeah.
who have then said there is a Great Island committee who are to give guidance and recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. Because the Board of Selectmen own the decision, it's not the advisory Great Island. So maybe we just need to,
Yeah, we're an advisory committee.
the Great Island is an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen.
I mean, we're ex officio too, so here we are charging,
This is
Yeah,
the time,
really,
and we're
yeah.
all agreeing it, this is
Yeah.
the time that we hopefully get contacts from the master planning group, and then we can have some, serious discussions with them. They're gonna listen to others too, we're not the only person.
But please try to go send, the reason one's being at town hall is, Saturdays are busy, that if you can come for party, whatever. The feeling is you can kind of let people, you can drop in and out a little bit more if you have more limited time. But then if you can get to the island in the afternoon, there will be some tours and, be a little bit more
Does anybody think they can make, because I'm concerned that, you know, Bill can't make it, I can't make it, Julie can't make it.
I
Can
will
somebody-
try to make one of the two.
Okay,
But,
That would be
But
great, you know, the more that can hear
but
it, see
I
it.
personally feel strongly that we should try
Just
to
a-
elevate the discussion
agree.
beyond
I'm
that.
Totally
I'm not
agree.
saying one or the
It's
other,
just
but
this.
I also think it would be good, because if you're there, then you're hearing
Right.
what
How-
other
what their
residents are
pitch
saying.
is, how
No,
they're
what other-
handling it.
Yes, first of all, you're hearing their presentation,
Yep.
but then also you're kind of hearing what you're,
Will
Or
there be a
use-
presentation both morning and?
Yes.
The same exact one, and
Yes.
then you go and do your own thing in the afternoon if it's all about the water?
the afternoon, there's also gonna be some tours led by different people.
But is the afternoon, there'll be a focus group on the
Yes.
water?
No, not,
On the water topics, things around the water, recreation around the water.
there's gonna be
topics.
different tours that are gonna be focused on different topics.
Here's what they had.
I don't know all the
Yeah, I
ins and
remember
outs of,
looking for it.
because the consultants are doing this, like exactly how they're facilitating it, but I know there's different tours, that the
Thank you.
focus of that tour, like one's on architecture, so it's people who more wanna like hear about the different, you know, the buildings and the structures.
They call them themes. They had ecology and nature, history and architecture, water and recreation. And so those are what they mentioned in the paper, and obviously one of those fits into our category right up front.
So the water and recreation is where we would
It'd be great if one of us is there just to
have
hear
the
it.
ability to participate.
Yeah, participate, hear it, you know, just get a sense of what they're saying, and then we'll get much more involved, hopefully after we
Right,
get
but then there'll be,
the connection.
there'll be more
But
opportunities.
I'd love to have somebody.
No, understood. I'm just thinking down the road a piece, because that's 5 days from now, or 4 days from
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And we are talking now about trying to revisit the ideas that we had earlier thought about in terms of our priorities.
You're probably not gonna get much of that across at this
No,
1.5 hours.
Totally understand, but if the person who's leading the
Knows your
water and
face.
recreation would
Right.
be inefficient if they didn't continue to lead it into the future, right?
And you're gonna create a relationship, like maybe at that point already with someone from that team. You know, it's a start. That's how I would look at it. Now, I may be wrong, but if I was going, that's the first thing I'd do is, hey, you know, we're part of this commission, and, you know, we wanna start a relationship here. We're gonna get involved with you through Monica, but, you know, face to face, it starts. That's how I would look at it. So hopefully, something we can show. I feel
I'm gonna
bad.
try to go. I'm gonna try to go in the afternoon.
You know, I had
I
pre-planned
have
to
to
be
think
away.
this
I'm out of
recording
town.
session would be recorded, as is this meeting. That's a speculation, but probably.
I would think.
I would think so. No, don't know, but it's probable. It's a public meeting.
Yeah, so I would think, so Rob, you can probably walk,
Yeah, I'm gonna,
okay,
yeah,
if you can, but if not, just say if you wanna use the bus, but then you have to go to Pear Tree Point,
right,
which.
right.
You have to get a reservation.
Get a reservation, which
Now,
I know there is
guess.
still space, but.
Can you ride your bike into Pear Tree Point now?
Really? Pear Tree Point, you can.
Go walk
No,
your
he
dog.
too. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Walk
Go
your
walk
bike.
your dog.
Great
over
idea.
there.
You can swim in there, there's no access. Shoot, swim. A boat.
We can't swim. She can't go in the
We
house.
can't get off the
No.
boat.
Breaking a rule, you're off the trail.
And they'll have you on tape, so watch out.
You would be, if you did so.
Well, I just want to.
Rob, if you can go in the afternoon, I'll try to go in the morning.
Yeah,
That's great, thanks.
So we got
Appreciate that.
both of them.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a great idea also, and I totally understand what you're saying as well. And I think it's probably an opportunity to almost use the water trail as a framework to tackle. I think you could layer a lot of these things onto this idea, especially if you loop in something like the nature center to develop a plan on what you can see along the path and identify fishing spots, for example. Boy Scouts built the racks at Pear Tree. They could potentially build racks there. Becomes kind of the thing with having to get permits. Everybody's going to want to have their stuff at Great Island, and if you have your kayak or paddleboard at Pear Tree, that's a long paddle to come all the way around. But people do a lot of transporting their own craft to a good paddle spot. And if they're gonna do it somewhere else, I mean, I work in Bridgeport, people still use the ramp right in Bridgeport, and they bring it right on their car, and if they wanna go, they're gonna go. So I think whether they drive, then it becomes a parking issue. So there's a couple things to iron out there, but I think that you can build upon the water trail idea. And then you bring in clams to it, since all the clam beds are on that side of this area, that inherently becomes part of the conversation. And then you're also tackling what to do with Great Island, because you're going around it anyway. So I think there's layers to it, and I think it's a good starting point to carry on a lot of the other items that you mentioned, Flip, too. So I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, Bill.
Sure, you're welcome.
That's good.
Do you want to,
Public beaches?
public beaches?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Condense it down a bit?
Yeah, I don't have anything too formed here. Was it July 4th this year we had a closure? Yeah, so that really ticked me off. I had people over. You know, it's not.
Nobody was happy.
No, exactly. So I wanted
That
to
was
know.
exacerbated by the testing center being closed for the long holiday
Right,
weekend.
right. So I wanted to know a little more about what the testing regime is, and so I've looked a little into that, and I've just got 5 or 10 minutes to tell you what I found, and it's in process, so there's no terminal point here or questions to be asked, really, I'll leave you with. But, so Mindy Shambrelli is, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, is our new Director of Health, so David Knopf was before. And I remember talking to him about this a long time ago, but I'd forgotten all those conversations, and Mindy, I think, is just breaking into the job and hasn't had time to talk with me about this yet. So I'm going to keep at her in another couple months when she's got a little more free time, but that's just fine. So I did talk, however, to Dave Callender, who is with the Connecticut Department of Health. He's the administrator of the EPA Beach Grant. And the EPA Beach Grant is how all the towns in Connecticut, 74 beaches in total, get funding to do water testing and have the water samples couriered to a lab site and tested. So that's what all the towns sign up for. They have recommendations. Basically, the towns are meant to, if they get into this program, are meant to sample once a week, send their things to the state lab. The test is for enterococci, if I'm pronouncing that correct, which is enterococci. Thank you. I knew I was going to goof that. And that is the saltwater equivalent of E. coli. And so that's the thing that EPA recommends you test for. And there are real limits. They recommend that anyone testing, if you get more than 104 coli CFU, something coli units, I'm forgetting what that is, but 104 is a measure, or over a month if you sample 5 times and get an average of a mean of 35 or more, that's another bad result where they say close. But about half the beaches in Connecticut that are closed, they're closed from preemptive rain events. So this is the trigger of 1 or 1.5 inches. And that's how our beaches have been being closed. In the last year, not 2024, but 2023, we had 8 closure events, 4 at Weed, 4 at Pear, same days, and those were all preemptive rain events. Now, I went on weather sites and tried to match up an inch or an inch and a half to those closures, and I mapped out 2, but I couldn't map out the other 2. So I'm wondering if Mindy has made a guess that it's about to rain, and on the safe side, close the beach. I'm not sure. I want to ask a little more about her process, where she gets where's the rain gauge? Can we watch it too? That type of thing. I'm just trying to understand it. But apparently, after a rain of an inch or inch and a half, there's very little argument up and down the coast that doesn't put your numbers well over the limits of 104 or 35. So I sent around a copy of the beach report that this is the Connecticut Department of Health. They've got this stuff prominently on their website, but right here, the first thing is their beach report. So this is what the EPA says: if you get our monies and use it in your state, you have to do a report every year. And this really pretty straightforward. Excuse me for the Kaspersky thing coming up all the time. On page 13, not going to be able to blow this up. They list the beaches that are monitored. Our Pear Tree Point. So I don't know if I can see this well enough. Our Pear Tree Point and Weed Beach are listed on it. There it is, if I can blow it up.
It's the top of the right.
Top right, yep. You can see in 2000, that's Pear Tree anyway, and Weed Beach follows this, and I guess it's further down. In 2023, we went to a Tier 3 beach, down from a Tier 2. And that definition, Tier 1 is when you have just one closure event in the year, in the summer. Tier 2 is when you have no more than 3. And Tier 3, if I'm remembering correctly, is when you have more than 3 or you don't test at all. So we slipped to the lowest of the categories. There's 9 beaches in that category in Connecticut of 74 that are tested. So that sort of stinks. It's maybe
But
just,
isn't that,
But those are
isn't
mostly
that
rain
really just a
events.
reflection of global warming with more rapid, more
well,
downpours?
it might be. I think that's,
Well, while it does stink, what does one
what,
infer from
what does
that?
one do about it? So here's an interesting fact. I don't know if I'll call it fact, but here are a couple maps on impervious surface that I looked at.
That was cool.
And so these are really interesting. So, you see the triangle where the sign, where it says Stanford? That triangle is the Darien, what it's called hydraulic
Easy for you to say.
yeah, I can't. Hydraulic Unit Code, HUC, HUC. And it's a HUC 12, which means it's up to 40,000 acres of land. I think it's between 10 and 40,000 acres, it varies. But that's the smallest watershed that the EPA collects data on. And that little wedge is the Darien wedge. And the interesting thing about that is, here's that area blown up. Our wedge grabs part of the waters of, or rather the water, what we might think of, well, it is this, it's our watershed, but it's over the Stanford border. So that line into Stanford is grabbing impervious surface from a more populated, a more urban area than our own. And likewise, to the east, we're grabbing part of Norwalk's more populated, more urban area, more impervious surface area. And those two watersheds on the west and east that are flowing, those are our watersheds and they're flowing into us. So that wedge has a 25% impervious surface area. The Stanford one has I think 11%, and the Norwalk has a 12%. So we're nearly double our neighboring towns, which are more urban in nature. So it's really sort of an odd fact. But the unfortunate part of this fact is then we have more storm runoff than Norwalk and Stanford into our waters. So when we have these preemptive rain events, well, when there's a rain event, we suffer more than our neighbors because of the impervious surface area. So I was really sort of shocked by that. And with, this is a constant refrain you're always hearing these days, but one seems to think it's true. When the rain events are happening, they're more intense. And so the stormwater runoff, the non-point source pollution of anything from fertilizers and lawns to dogs pooping in nature walks to geese is all coming into our waters more than it is our neighbors. So this would say that Darien is more prone to this. And so with climate change, we have a bigger problem than our neighbors, this would argue.
So I have a question about this. This says the square miles within, is that within the red and R area? That's grown? How does that happen?
I don't know what that.
It's gone from 446 to 494.
Yeah, so that
That
must
doesn't make
be
a lot
the-
of sense to me,
It
but
must
in any
be for
event,
all
the
of
percentage.
Connecticut, I think that's the
That's the
The
amount
red
of,
tally?
that's the amount of square miles that are
Okay.
becoming
Everywhere?
that are in the
impervious.
red tally at 26.
Well, there's a
30%.
percentage, so the percentage is going up, that makes sense, but
Yeah, I'm
the
not-
other part, I guess,
I'm not that steeped in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Maybe just a procedure point. We have town employee that samples the water on our behalf, or this is the person you referenced earlier?
Yeah, the town, the Department of Health samples once a week
Right.
or makes the rain call.
And then we have Park and Rec who administers the beaches?
No, the health department makes the decision.
No,
whether-
no, I understand that, but the beaches are under the control of Park and Rec.
Yes,
Okay, and so we have a health department professional testing and determining beaches are open or closed.
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, and then following.
For swimming.
For swimming.
For
yeah,
swimming.
for-
Are you
for
guys
swimming,
all
yeah.
familiar with the website maintained by the city of Norwalk, the Norwalk City Rain Gauge?
Yeah, you sent
So,
it, right?
yeah, that's neat.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
And you can see last 24 hours, last 48 hours, last 72 hours. I mean, it's the best local rainfall
Measurement.
data set that I've seen by miles. And it's current.
well, this process with closing the beaches and submitting the data to EPA is not that transparent because the report doesn't get published except retroactively in the back year. So I don't know what's been happening for this last season. We will at the end of the year, we'll see the report. But right away in my mind, I think it'd be great to have more transparency from our health department on what they're measuring and live time us seeing it, and if there's anything to be learned from that. Especially given our,
But
what
that's
looks
a
like a more
problem.
sensitive situation. Yeah.
That's a big problem.
That problem won't go away.
It's only gonna get worse.
Well,
only gonna
with
get
volume, with additional rain, that would only reasonably lead to more beach closures.
And more development, right? More development means less permeable surfaces, which means more runoff, right? I mean, that's,
We have a lot of Stanford there, and they're,
Yeah,
there's
kills
a lot of development in this little town too, don't fool yourself.
And the three
not
rivers,
even close to the magnitude of what's going on next to us.
Okay,
the three rivers that we have in our town
I
all
agree,
enter
but
the beach.
don't sell Darien short on what they're doing.
I'm not
But is Darien seeking, for example, in buffers between land and water, help from Norwalk and Stamford for keeping runoff?
There's no dollars from
No.
Norwalk and Stanford coming to Darien to help us.
Well, I wonder if they're.
But I mean, like, at the same time, we pump all of our sewage over to Stanford, and one of the actual big causes of issues with big rainstorms is the combined storm overflowing in Stanford and just dumping sewage into the Stanford Harbor, which dwarfs what's coming down Goodwives River. And, you know, we actually don't have, other than kind of bordering on the Norotan River, we don't have a lot of big rivers in Darien. We're not putting out a lot of fresh water from after a rain compared to, you know, 5 Mile River compared to Norotan River.
Goodwives is the only one that's right through the heart of Darien into our
And
waters.
Stony Brook, they combine and then come down through Gorms
But,
Pond.
but as much
Right.
as much as that causes flooding issues in Darien, it's actually quite small in terms of its flow relative to the Norotan River.
And they're all impaired. They're all on the impaired list for the state. And it's not unusual up and down Connecticut, all the rivers are on the impaired list, but that's a fact.
The one positive spin is any new development that's going on, any water runoff from their property impervious is going into the ground in filtration systems. So newer construction is actually being handled better, but we're a long ways from that because there's many that are not. It goes free foaming, sheeting, or whatever, right into a water course and then down to the beach. There's some hope for the
Yeah,
future.
but this is really, it doesn't seem to me on the agenda of the town too much. I know they talk about it more these days, but when you think of what our life may be in 10 years with beach closures.
Doesn't the town have a sewer commission? Right.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Is that in their domain?
There's the
To deal with the volume of water and
The
sewage?
health department is the commission, the department that oversees the safety issues of the water quality. There is no real commission in the town that oversees the environmental impact of all this.
Although it's in the charter of EPC.
Yeah,
But it's not,
It's kind of
really-
piecemeal.
Not
It's
you-
piecemeal. It's
yeah.
not a driven, it's it's one of their pieces. The building department also, you know, they all have pieces to it, trying to control some of this, but it's not an overwhelming department that's handling what are we doing about it, you know? So it could be improved for sure.
But we don't have a environmental commission here in our town government. Many
Conservation
town-
Commission, I think is another way
Conservation
to
Commission,
call it.
environment. Many towns do.
Or director.
Or, yeah, and whose, their whole mission in life is to focus on environmental quality.
Well, there's no end point to this other than that I'm gonna keep on talking to Mindy, find out more, and I'll report back as I find more. But I thought this was interesting enough. to-
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that around.
Appreciate that. Next was the cleanup for October 19th. Hopefully we have some people who are ready to do that. David Kahn is going to be leading that. He mentioned about a 7:30 start versus, according to his...
That's because of the tide.
Because of the tide, but you know, that can be...
A weekend?
I know, that can be beat around a little bit, so it's just thrown out as a possibility. So hopefully we get some good contributions to that, clean up. It's always a good item. The only other item I have is, you may have all gotten that invite to the Greensedge Lighthouse. If you haven't gone, take advantage of it if you're around. It's pretty spectacular. I know some have already been there, some can't make it. Maybe they'll do it again, but it's, and for some reason you didn't get it because I didn't have your name on it, but I'll get it to you for sure.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah, it would be great. So what they're planning, and a quick, you probably all saw it, is on Sunday from Rowayton, they'll have a constant boat going out there for invitees, which you'll get that, and everybody here got it too. It's
Is this coming
spectacular.
Sunday?
This Sunday, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and I'll get that to you and make sure that that's on your piece. For some reason they didn't pick up Darien Harbor email. They didn't quite understand what that was. I didn't have your name on it, so, but everybody else got it. Sure. Anyway, a little quickie on that, and then there's some postcards that they have. In 1902 they built that, and they just plunked it in place, and then you can see that there were no rocks around it. It began to shift a little bit over years, and so it's a great story. Go out there and tell you the whole thing. But that's an original of what it looked like in 1902. It was pretty fun.
It really is pretty special. They've done
Yeah.
a great job,
Yeah.
top to bottom with it. And they've got like they've got a lower level, they've got sort of the electronic side with batteries and all that. And they've got a place for like the Maritime Center to come in and do tours for kids and stuff. And there's residents throughout the other levels. There's a full kitchen. It's really, they've done a great job. Put it on your radar.
What's the
Take
usage?
advantage. The usage
Yeah,
of.
is it just, is it more like ambassadorial kids coming
It's
through?
being
and stuff?
developed. They're trying to figure out how to get
Yeah.
more intense use out of it.
The only thing that
Education.
seems screwed up these days is the foghorn, which is not the people who run the Lighthouse, that's the Coast Guard. That only goes off on bluebird days.
And you'll have a discussion now, when they give you the tour, they'll talk about the trouble they've had with Coast Guard handling that correctly, and
Yeah,
and technically now, if you have the code to get in, you can send it off, and if you're a ship
That's
coming
right,
in,
that's where it works.
you can set it up now to have it, let you know where it is. But as you say, it's been going off bluebird days, and if you're on that thing, it's supposed to be pretty intensely loud. So,
Oh, yeah.
and you probably hear it where you are.
I think
too.
anybody can set it off with their VHF if you're within a half mile.
Yeah, you can.
Something
code it.
like channel 73, you key it 3 times.
Right.
So
So that's a number that shouldn't be given out to pranksters.
Well, I know.
A lot of pranksters are watching Darien Public TV right now.
Exactly.
All those
We're not
cool
talking
kids,
about
you
that.
know,
And it
government
almost
access.
never goes off.
It won't be the kids, it'll be the adults.
I never hear it.
Yeah, well, actually, they don't not use it now. It used to be, it was fog intense, right? They would set up, some laser would set it off and anytime fog, and now they cut that out entirely, so it's by demand. It's what it's supposed to be, so. Anyway, fascinating, if you get a chance, it's a freebie. I took the tour a month ago, it was $100 a person to go there and to Sheffield Island, and it was well worth it. And now, they're willing to, the guy bought it for $120,000 at auction, put millions of dollars into it from friends around the area, and get a chance to check it out. So,
I think it's the context of how could that fit into some kind of a larger plan with Great Island or town resources.
Yeah, and
I think it's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, and you were at it too, and the originators are talking about that already, as having some connection there. They've already connected with Sound Waters. You know, it's interesting that, do we have to have a copyright on this? It's on our logo, you know?
Well, the interesting thing is it's not part of the town of Darien.
It's not,
Right.
right? No, it's
And
interesting.
it's privately owned.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
yeah, there's no public funding going to it or involved in it. It's all private donations.
But they don't have a right to get rid of it, right? It has to sit as a lighthouse?
The Coast Guard has,
It's a lease.
yeah,
It's a lease
Yeah.
from the Coast Guard. The way I understand it
Yeah.
is it's a lease from the Coast Guard so that the Coast Guard and the government doesn't have to maintain and upkeep it. But there are stipulations on how it can be used and its level of maintenance. So you can't get the lease and tear it down.
If the light breaks, who fixes it?
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
They
Yep, and they
maintain
have
all
to,
of that now.
yeah, they have to maintain that and they have to have access to that and, you know, the lens is still there up in the tower, but it's not, you know, the light that was originally it is not what
The Fresnel-
lights it now.
the
The Fresnel,
Fresnel is
yeah,
not
lights,
there.
yeah.
If you compare and contrast that to the Stanford light, where similar activity 20 years ago was done, I'm not sure the right time frame, and it failed.
So, interesting, a little tidbit on that. Brendan McGee, who owns 101 in Rowayton, and another gentleman have acquired Stanford Lighthouse and are in the process of doing a similar thing that what's been done in Rowayton. A little less privately funded in that way and a little bit slower. But Brendan is the one who sort of came across Green's Ledge when it came up on auction and had the idea, and another group came along with more money and he sort of partnered with them and said, listen, here's the idea. And they kind of ran with it with a lot of his direction. He deserves a ton of credit for that happening. And he and someone else have acquired the lease on Stanford. So it's only gonna get better in Stanford at the Lighthouse because it's a little rough right now.
A lot of seagull stuff there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's 34 of those, they call them spark plugs,
Mhm.
on the Connecticut coast. So they were quickly made on shore, floated out there, sunk, and that's how it began in 1990.
The one-
Fascinating story.
The one in Westport's been done, there's quite a number of them that have been sort of, have gone through this process of being leased out and renovated by private people. And some people use them for function, some people use them for their own enjoyment, some are educational facilities, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on to the minutes, we have enough, anybody have any comments for the minutes from last time? Do we need, and we can vote on sending those off?
I recommend, or whatever it is, that we accept the minutes.
Excellent. Anybody second it?
Sorry.
Great.
Can I say the date of the minutes?
Sorry?
Can I say the date of the minutes you're approving?
Oh, yes, those were,
July.
It's the most-
July 15th. Second.
thank you, Brent, just a second,
Some
thank you very
minutes.
much. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, beautiful.
All minutes heretofore.
Very great. Any new business?
I have one thing,
Sure.
and this is really just asking advice, not recommending anything, but on Saturday, my wife and I ran down to Greenwich to see the Indian Harbor Classic Yacht Regatta, which is gorgeous. And it was a bluebird day, and it was great. You go out Darien Harbor, the Smith's Reef, and you go right. So you're going to Stanford, then you go to the light off, the red off
Cows,
Chopin, the cows.
32A.
You have to go through our oyster farm. So I'm wondering, can the nav mark be moved or can the oyster farm be moved? But if it had been a pea soup fog and you were just following your chart plotter, you'd go right through the middle of, it's gotta be 100 pots. 100 at a minimum, and they're not just slightly in the way. You've got to go way around it. And it strikes me as, I was looking what due south from Holly Pond was? No, it's a Stanford field. It's definitely Stanford waters. So we in the commission have no influence, but I'm just curious. It's such a lousy place to be. You always focus on keeping the fairways clear. Nav marks are supposed to take you around hazards, not through them. And I did actually spend some time Googling this on Sunday, trying to figure it out. And the company that had been doing the oyster farming, it's kind of interesting. It's oyster farming in cages, not on the bottom. It doesn't seem to have had a lot of activity, or I couldn't find a lot of activity in the past year or so. I hope that that's not the case. I hope they're not just abandoned pots. But I'd love someone to say, move the nav marks or move the oyster farm, but you shouldn't go through it. What if it were a pea soup fog?
Well, or it's dark, I mean, people,
Or at night?
the Tuesday night beer can series, all the folks from Darien come back through there in the dark, well,
You go from red to red, right?
Well, do you recall,
And they're
maybe
way
about
out
a
of
year
the way.
ago, we had input to the Blue Water.
Yep.
And that Blue Water, which was a state-funded activity designed to minimize contention and overlap of inventory all the assets. And it was designed to say, that was the purpose, the charter, was to say, how do we minimize locations of fish pots, oyster, all those aspects you described, and place them in such a way that we wouldn't have contention with sailboat racing. So we took, remember, we gave input to that area for waters that span from 32 as a western border to Green's Ledge as a eastern border, and mark those as racing areas, and with the purpose of minimizing the likelihood of object like you just described being placed on them. So, and they designated that to be identified areas, not to place those kind of commercial entities there.
I mean, it probably gives us more purchase than not with
Yeah.
like the Stanford Harbor Commission perhaps. But I assume this is Steve of Stellamar?
Yeah, I mean,
There's-
we've spoken to the guy who owns that, told them it's a bad idea, and they ought to have bigger markers that are not just white that you can't see.
Get it on the charts, call the feds up and get it on
Yeah,
NOAA
so
charts.
we-
and-
We've,
I think it's an
our best hope
advisory.
is that they go out of business and that they just go away.
Well, actually, that
That's
they remove
Stelmar,
them.
I very little activity that I could find on the web, just yesterday when I was looking.
I'll take a peek at that, because we spent time and we purposely tried to influence that. But it was meant to be more of an advisory, but that advisory was supposed to also give guidance toward local entities who had regulatory.
You're quite right. I mean, I think a call to the Stanford Harbor Commission would be worthy, and find out if this guy's got a lease and how long does it run and could it be relocated or.
I could call aquaculture, deep aquaculture.
Yeah.
I'll give them a ring and see
Better idea.
how, I'd like to, A,
If
I'd
they
like to learn
move
more
north
about
a
this.
quarter of a
and
mile, they'll be
secondly,
out of the way.
how does it get permitted and how does it get positioned?
They only have to move north less than a quarter of a mile, and they'd be out of the way.
It's on the run line between the two parties.
I actually haven't,
The
I
run line
haven't,
goes
I haven't
right
been down
through
that
them.
way yet this year, and I haven't seen it.
I've been there 2 years.
You can't.
Oh, it's been there for,
Yes, more than that.
If you haven't
like
seen
7
it,
years.
Yeah.
It just comes up on you, all of a sudden you're just, you're right,
I
you're
mean,
following your thing.
how high
and
does
you're-
it rest above the water?
It's
No,
just-
there's just a bunch of lobster pots.
It's just a white buoy.
Just a
there's
white
no
buoy,
floating
yeah.
buoys.
just one.
No.
There's
More than 100.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
everywhere.
It's a
Alright.
field.
It's a field.
And the
Actually,
cages hang
yeah,
what,
it's
like
two-
5 feet down?
It's an
yellows and
obstacle
whites, so
field.
there may be two.
Yellows and whites, and they're, it's gotta be 100 yards wide north-south, and it's gotta be 200 yards long, east-west.
And they're not like day glow orange or anything like that, they're like white. And you can imagine if it was wavy or foggy or dark.
White caps at night,
Yeah.
forget about it.
You
You're
can't
gonna
see.
foul your props.
You also talked to the Stanford Harbor Master?
That's one guy I haven't introduced myself.
If they just
to
moved
Just
the
about
whole
everybody else,
thing
though.
north, literally a couple mile, it would be out of the fairway.
I would think frankly.
Sounds like two birds, one stone there, you know?
Yeah.
They're losing, you have to think that they're losing. buoys.
Yes, yeah.
There's mooring balls because of the transit of vessels east and west. Maybe it's not important to them.
You wouldn't think that the aquaculture would be that much different,
I
a quarter of a mile, right? And,
Strange place to put them,
yeah.
but that was the prescribed area that we said not to place.
It'd be interesting to get on that blue water, I assume it's open to the public, and see
Yeah.
if the overlay is actually there, that they actually plug that into the master.
Yeah, I can't.
John, it's a huge field. You take your boat out there,
It's-
it's not just a few lobster pots.
We did the work, which was kind of frustrating. And that led us to believe that would be protected, and they would advocate for no placement of commercial entities in that
But
space.
these things have been there for many years,
Yeah.
many
I think it
years.
was,
It's
Isn't
not,
that value?
oh, yeah.
I think it was pre-blue plan. That,
Amazing.
Totally.
Yeah,
I do think so.
5 years.
No, more than that.
Dozen?
I mean, 2019, COVID was 5 years ago.
Isn't that scary?
They were there before that.
Where it isn't.
Went fast, right?
Yeah, they were there before that.
It's off of Champagne. Right, one of you guys could actually show them on the chart, it would be helpful.
Oh,
Show 'em.
yeah, I can show you
Just draw a run
exactly. I
line
was just
between
there
32
yesterday.
and 15. It's the run line between the.
If you go
Smith
point to
Reef
point, you
and
can't
32.
miss them.
Go for a drive, you're fine, trust me, go
Oh,
find
yeah,
them.
all right, go right down the dark.
Go out right now.
Bring your knife.
You'll get one.
They're
Bring your knife,
closer
you'll have
to
to cut 'em
32A.
Yeah,
No, 32.
well, there's 30.
32, yeah, they're more or less where the 16
32
and the
is
10 are,
Okay.
except they're out here.
That's the piece area though.
Oh, so straight line, okay, so
Yeah,
if
so
you
if
went
you-
from
if you-
32 to 30, it's
So
right in
they
They can be
there.
one for 30,
They can move them.
you would go right through them and
Racks
hit them at about
that are sitting on the
14.
bottom.
Oh yeah, they can move them, but they can't put them somewhere else unless they get that piece area.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, see, I was,
So-
Correct.
I
That's
was
correct.
scared,
They
I
can't
used to stay a
move
little south of that.
If that's the area that they can put
I don't
them, that's
venture
their
into
lease
that
with the
area.
state, then.
Oh, they
that's-
share all the
They
state.
have to get another lease.
All right, any other further comments?
I have a question for John. You were
Okay.
working on getting a speed reduction and markers sort of off the entrance to Ziegler's Fish. Whatever
From
happened to that?
Contentment Island to Hay Island.
Yeah, so that all kinds of ties into, you know, the documents that I sent.
Yeah,
So
I thought that was.
what you see in the what we've always been told is, not knowing about Special Act 597,
Hmm.
in 597, it says we can actually designate our
Right.
own speed zones.
Right.
So that kind of changes things. Then again, I don't want to just thumb my nose at deep, still, because they really feel that's the one thing that they're very strong about when changing ordinances. They want to rubber stamp it. So I think we've got a few other things to look at, and we can visit that at the same time. But I mean, if we just wanted to, from our own special act, we could technically just go drop them in the water if we wanted to. But I don't think that would be wise in the long run to.
For the relationship with,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
But this is one of the areas where we were looking for outside legal advice
Yeah.
on how does this all actually work.
So, the gentleman that I recommended, I spoke to him a few weeks ago. And I told him about our situation. I told him about 597. And he said, you know, if you look at what we have in 597 and then you look at the 5 Mile River Commission, they have power over the 5 Mile River in a similar situation like we have this power from 597. Deep has approached them on more than one occasion, you need to get a harbor management plan, and they've said, no, we've got whatever their act is. So this gentleman is also, is not, and only a maritime attorney, he's also a member of the 5 Mile River Commission. And this is something he's been through before.
Jeff, do you think this is the idea that he will give us insight and an opinion? I mean, it's not based on his experience?
I think he has the expertise to show us how to sorry for the pun, but navigate these waters, because he's been there, done that, got the T-shirt. He's done this before. Because he's part of the 5 Mile River Commission, and when they've gone to, and that larger document you read, that, I don't know if you had time to read it, it's pretty long, but it goes through a number of different stories and scenarios on how we got to where we are today. And I've rediscovered this because everybody that was involved in that is probably no longer here in one way or another. And, I've rediscovered it, brought it to the forefront, and now we always have a different set of rules now than, we thought we were dealing with before. The state said that they would never endorse our ordinances, but they also never told us about 597 either until I said, where is this? I want to see it. And then they sent it to me. Because originally all I got was the letter. And I said, well, and I was actually taken back a little bit by it. And then I finally said, well, 7597. And then when I read it and went through it, the ordinances made a whole lot of sense to me on how we arrived where we are today. But the maritime attorney I've spoken to, he knows how to handle this situation. So.
And you think that, and just that handling says how to using your words, navigate through the gray and overlapping statute.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for him, but that was the sense that I got.
I'm trying to, as I say, get the sense of what.
Yeah, that's he's very familiar with how they wanted to handle the 5 Mile River Commission, and he was able to work through it and keep a very good working relationship with Deep.
Since this would be a fee that we would pay this council, I would think that this has to go before the Board of Selectmen for an appropriation for that.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've given names and I've given a summary similar to what I've given. I don't know where the town attorneys are sitting with this and where they are with, I don't know if they're speaking to this other gentleman. I don't know anything at this point. I wish I knew more, but
I guess I'd ask, could we construct this in email so that we can start to see the process, so that we're all having transparency here?
yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
I'm just offering that forward, since I'm sensing you're not satisfied with the progress.
We're here to help
Yeah.
our harbor master get things done. We've worked very hard on this, so the next letter
There's
is,
there's probably something in the gears, or the gears are probably turning. I just haven't gotten feedback on it yet.
So that's, my ask is, let's reduce it to writing,
Yeah.
so we have clarity. on
Sure.
it. That gives us a timeline, an intent, a process, because I think what we're trying to understand, both the process, I'm suggesting the process, the timeline, and the next steps.
John, do you get the sense that the 5 Mile Commission is satisfied as things stand without having a harbor management? So they're happy with the fact that they have their own thing, which would probably suggest.
5 Mile River's their domain, and the state doesn't have much of a hand in it, as I understand.
That might suggest that perhaps we should be happy with our special.
Well, the report as much came to that sort of that conclusion that we're not going to do
Does the 5 Mile River Commission not have I thought they did have a harbor management plan. I
No,
thought,
they
because
don't.
they're called the 5 Mile River Commission, not Advisory Commission. And I thought
I feel like does
to
Norwalk
have
a
that
harbor
name,
It's too much to put on a t-shirt.
Yeah, no, but
Drop that one.
But I had always understood that they did in fact have, and that's how.
Norwalk has one.
In fact, that's how they can charge more for their moorings. We couldn't charge what they charged.
I think I've never read whatever powers they have. And, you know, you look at our document, they have their document, most likely, and maybe they dove deeper, I don't know. But to your point, yes, it's my understanding in order to charge, you have to have a harbor management plan, but this is way before the Harbor Management Plan Act,
Yeah.
so,
In 2 cities, you know,
Yes.
Darien and Norwalk combined.
yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know anything about the 5 Mile River Commission. When I found out about it, it was shortly after I became harbor master. And I've spoken to the Norwalk harbor master about it, and he goes, that's some anomaly, a jurisdiction unto their own. He goes, I have no power over there, and I said, I as well.
There being 5 Mile,
5 Mile River,
carving that out from the Norwalk.
exactly.
Well,
The harbor
because
master has no power.
It
over
is actually a jointly owned, it's not part of just Norwalk.
it. Right.
It's half Darien, half Norwalk.
Isn't there a federal mandate, like, it's something that it's a safe harbor that the feds at some point wanted to ensure? I thought that was somewhere in its history.
Yes, it has a different harbor status relative to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Army
I
Corps of
think.
Engineers, right.
But I don't think that doesn't impact all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question I would have is if the harbor management plan only pertains to Norwalk Harbor proper,
Mhm.
instead of the whole town, so to say. So it would apply just to Norwalk Harbor, 5 miles its own thing,
Yeah.
in which case then they get the
Yeah,
operate. on their
5
own.
Mile River is definitely has its own jurisdiction. It's not Norwalk. The question is, do they have a harbor management plan or not? I had always understood that they do. Maybe they use this other thing.
Gentleman told me the 5 Mile River does not have a harbor management plan. So I don't know what, I don't know what their set of rules are, I really don't, And I only spoke to him once, and I just said, you know, I'm just asking questions for myself, not on behalf of the town.
It would seem that town is unwilling to adopt a harbor management plan, then it becomes a matter of just keeping a friendly relationship with the thanks but no thanks, without.
Yeah, because it's my understanding that harbor management plans are voluntary.
Right, but there's a way.
And as we've learned over the past couple of years, their effectiveness actually is in question at the state level, right?
Right.
I mean, if you look at Greenwich and some of these other stories we've read, is that like, it's a lot of energy and a lot of effort that doesn't really provide much support, particularly if we have this unique.
I had a conversation with the gentleman who helped the town of Darien draw up its harbor management plan. And I gave him a little bit of background on the number of conversations I've had. And he,
Did he have time for that?
what are you saying, I'm long-winded?
Oh, no.
No, I had the conversation with him, and, you know, he's always been a proponent of harbor management plans, but he told me, after what's happened in Greenwich, he doesn't see any benefit in getting a harbor management plan anymore. And I told the attorney that I spoke to that, and he was like, he was really taken back. He says, that's quite a 180 for him.
Well, because he makes his living
Yeah,
designing harbor management plans.
yeah.
All right, we good?
Looking forward to it.
All right.
I need help drafting that.
Yeah,
The attorney call.
I'll just,
But
I'll,
we should need progress.
right. But, you know, I'm not gonna say anymore. Anyway, it's, you know, something's gotta happen. It'll happen.
Actually, my fear is the opposite. Nothing will happen unless we start to.
No, I don't think nothing's gonna happen. Something will happen, I just don't know. I haven't heard progress. I'll see if I can get some help. You and I?
Yeah. no,
Okay.
We're here to help you get this going, so I will. On that note, any motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn this evening's meeting.
Second that?
Second that.
All in favor?
Right.
Did I do that right?